Okay. All right. So nice having so many people. Okay. All right, let's start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Welcome, happy after Pesach for everybody. I'm so glad to see you. I hope everybody's Pesach was meaningful, was interesting, was festive, etc. Today is a special day and a difficult day. That today is Yom HaShoah. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. If you're in Israel, this is a very powerful day because they blow a siren, or they not blow a siren, they sound a siren and all the traffic stops. People get out of their cars and stand at attention and to remember the 6 million who have passed away, and also to honor those who, the heroism. The Yom HaShoah has a fascinating history, which is really a class in and of itself. It was established by the Knesset. So we don't usually have, worldwide holidays. We have Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Day of Remembrance Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, that were established by the state of Israel. And this is interesting. It took 9 to 11 years for the Knesset to fully establish Yom HaShoah, because there was such disagreement. Funny, surprising thing that the Jewish people would disagree on what it would even be called. Okay, so it was originally called Holocaust Remembrance and Ghetto Uprising Day. The date of it was to coincide with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The reason it was established in the state of Israel was not just because the state of Israel is obviously made up of Holocaust survivors, and it was more intensely personal than the Jewish people around the rest of the world, but also to confront the feeling of powerlessness that people experienced from the Holocaust. And so they specifically wanted to focus on those people who were considered heroic. So initially it was called Ghetto Uprising Day. But then, of course, the conversation was like, well, what about everybody else? It's like, you can't just say, well, we're honoring the people who rose up in the ghetto. On one hand, that was needed almost for you can see for the psychic healing of the phrase, we will not go like lambs to slaughter. Well, a lot of people did go, because when you have machine guns and dogs at you, there is no other choice other than going with your dignity and self-respect. And that's just as heroic. So that's just an example of what some of the conversation was about in establishing this day. Is there's quiet heroism, there's heroism that still results in death. There are people who did resist. There were all sorts of things. So who and what are we trying to remember? So this is why it took 9 years of consecutive Knesset conversations and votings and name changes until it got to what it is, what we all kind of grew up with, which is Yom HaShoah. But it is really, that's not the full name. It wasn't always the full name. It's been many other things. Now we have it as Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we talk about the whole thing, about the people who resisted, and about the uprising, and about the Warsaw Ghetto, and about the partisans, and about the mothers who comforted babies, God forbid, in the gas chambers. I mean, we don't know. We can't understand it. We can't comprehend it at all. So we just put it all under one umbrella, which is today. But the date of it, because you could say, what makes today? Why is today different from any other days? Like Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, could have been observed any day of the year, any day, every day. So why this day? But that was tied to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. So that's why it has this particular focus. Again, it's a conversation we could talk about in so many different ways. What I'd like to do is for us to put it in the context of the Parsha of Shmini. And Dale has for us the fire, which is the fire from Nadav and Abihu, who Aaron's sons who offered the strange fire, and they were consumed by God and they died. They are not, so we're going to talk about another aspect, not specifically about Nadav and Abihu, but about the consecration of the Mishkan and what happened and how we can relate that to I will say, the general force of destruction and new life. So people have said the state of Israel was built on the ashes of the Holocaust. This is not to say that that was the price we paid and that's what was necessary to happen. We can't say that. We're not here to say that. The reality is that people who were barely alive, who came as refugees to the land of Israel, who basically came out of the concentration camp or handed a knife or a stick or whatever, it was like, we got to fight to defend this country, that it was built on the backs of people who were basically half dead. So that out of the destruction, the reality is that is true, that the state of Israel has been built on that. So how do we understand it? And just kind of like stepping back in a broader way, how do we understand destruction and building, something coming down and being put back up together, putting back up again? Is it in better form? Is there an improvement? What's happening? And truly it comes from this week's Parsha of Parsha Shemini. This is juxtaposed, and this is just an interesting, another halachic thing to talk about that I learned about last night and hadn't really thought about. It's bizarre that Yom HaShoah is in the month of Nisan, honestly. During the month of Nisan, if your relative, God forbid, passes away, there are no eulogies. The person is buried and you sit Shiva, but there are no eulogies during the month of Nisan. Because the month of Nisan is a month of joy, because it's the month of Pesach, it's the month of our freedom, it is the month that's launching the entire Jewish calendar, the whole Jewish people, the sea has risen, not the split sea, the sea of joy has risen, there's nothing that can take us down. So there's a halachic issue about having Yom HaShoah, which is about basically giving eulogies and coming down during the month of Nisan. It's like, it doesn't really belong in this month, unless it does. Because what are we also celebrating? So starting in the month of Nisan is when we are on the lookout for new growth. So it's starting with the Rosh Chodesh Nisan is when we keep our eyes on the blossoming of fruit trees. So we are supposed to be on the lookout, and it doesn't have to be a fruit you like. It can be any fruit. It can be a crab apple. It can be whatever, it doesn't have to belong to you, but we will say a blessing, and we spoke about this on Tuesday as well. We will say a blessing when we just see one blossom, just the first blossom you see for new growth of fruit, not just another kind of blossom that's not about fruit. It has to be about fruit, because fruit is something that's talking about the future and growth. Yeah, I'm saying used to have curriculum and materials from the kibbutz started in northern Israel. Yes, absolutely. All sorts of amazing thing by survivors. So if anybody who has, I'm keeping my eye out on our crabapple tree, but I haven't seen a blossom yet. It should be soon. But if you have the regular Art Scroll Siddur, it's on page 228 and 229. It's under Blessings of Praise and Gratitude. And it's toward the bottom, and it's upon seeing fruit trees in bloom during the spring, and you only recite it once each year. And the blessing is, blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, for nothing is lacking in his universe, and he created in it good creatures and good trees to cause mankind pleasure with them. Because so this is the blessing that we are going to say when we see this. So that's the month of Nisan. Nisan's about everything's new, everything's growing, everything's renewing. So the concept of new versus renew is really the focus of what we're going to talk about. If something is brand new from the get-go, like the beginning of creation, it's called yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing, that's creation. But then there's recreation. The whole definition of recreation means that something went away and had to be recreated, which means there was some form of destruction. There was some form of falling apart. When you are rebuilding, recreating, renewing, by definition, you have gone through a process that was up here, that went down, and then comes back up. And it's like, what is that process, and how do we see it, and how do we understand it to be, I'll say even inspired by it, because this process repeats itself at both the microcosmic level in our own day. We even have that when we go to sleep each night. We understand that our neshamas partially leave us. We have a partial death experience. We have a near-death experience when we go to sleep. That our neshamas leave us, because the first thing we say in the morning when we wake up, when we say Modeh Ani, is we say Shehech Zarta Bi Nishmati. Thank you for returning my soul to me. If something was returned to me, that means it was taken away. So that there is a partial, every single day of our life, there is this partial deconstruction, going away, semi-death, near-death experience, and then we are renewed for life each day. Usually renewal brings with it an added boost of energy. There's something different about something that has been renewed. There is, it's like when you've lost something and you find it again, or how we are all, God willing, going to feel and are starting to feel when our normal lives are renewed. There will be a period of time, I wish it would be long, but unfortunately it'll probably be short, where the first time we get together with everybody and there's no masks, the first time we get to go to a concert, the first time we get to travel to Israel with me in October, all of these things are there's going to be a heightened pleasure when something is renewed, because it was out of our hands and now it's back, and back bigger, back different, back something. And that power is the power of life. And that life power is about renewal. That is the month of Nisan, is the month of renewal. Could even say that the Jewish people, going back to the splitting of the sea, people can't live in water. Okay, so it was one thing to be rescued from Egypt. That was one kind of, that was freedom. That's freedom. Okay, you're out of a bad situation. You've never known anything different. You've never known anything different, and you get to experience something new. That's one kind of pleasure. But when you are alive and well, and you go into a sea that you don't know if you're going to drown and come out, the risk that you're taking that this is not going to end well, and you come out on the other side, that's renewal. That is a higher level of joy than even getting out of Egypt. It's like, this could have ended very poorly for us. So, I just asked somebody who has had a near-death experience, somebody who's survived, God forbid, a car crash, surgery, an accident, all of these things. Is like when they come out, on one hand, it's the trauma of what they went through. On the other hand, there is the heightened pleasure and joy and happiness of like, thank God I made it. Thank God I made it. So this is the pleasure of renewal of the month of Nisan. Like when we see that blossom again, it's like the fruit is on its way. Same thing. When you say, I didn't see the rest of your connection, Dale. I didn't see the rest of your chat. You can unmute and tell me what.
Oh, when you were talking about yesh me'ain, something from nothing, and I keep looking at Parshat Shmini, and when I look at Shmini, I see yesh and I see me'ain, even though the aleph isn't there.
Oh,
it's kind of like, it's not quite funny. The matria, but kind of a connection that you're sharing this, and it just fit for me when I kept looking at the Shmini. So
I love that. Okay, what Dale is talking about is if you have your Chumash on page 588, the word Shmini, I love that, is the word that means eighth. Okay, Shmini means eighth. But in the word there, you have a hint. You have a hint to it for sure, because you have a yud and a shin, which spells yesh, and you have a mem, may, and then you have a yud and a nun. It's almost yesh mi'ayin. It's almost a something from nothing. So this idea, and the level 8 is about a transcendence, where you're going this way around, like, and you're going, and then you elevate up to the next level. that is something that is new, but it's built on what came before. So that is the other idea that we're going to talk about, because what is this Yom Hashmini? Okay, so that's what we're going to connect together. And it comes from a very unusual truth. This comes from a shir. I just want to give credit here from Rabbi Noach Light on Torah Anytime. And he's quoting all sorts of sources. I didn't write down everybody, but Rashi, the Tanchuma, the Midrash Rabbah, Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Hirsch, etc. Lots of amazing, reliable people. It was on the 8th day, page 589, Moshe summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. And this was going to be, the 8th day was the end of the consecration of the Mishkan and of the Kohanim. It says for the previous 7 days, what was happening? Every day, Moshe was putting up and taking down the Mishkan, putting it up and taking it down. And he was serving as the Kohen Gadol. He was serving, he was doing the whole service for 7 days, putting it up, taking it down. And on the 8th day, he hands it over to Aaron. Now, on each of those seven days, it's like everybody's watching, like, what are you doing? It looked on the outside like nothing was happening. What was supposed to happen, what people were expecting to happen, is the Shekhinah, the divine presence, was going to come down and be manifest to the entire Jewish people. But in fact, that didn't happen. And so the people are like, what's happening? What's happening? And on the 8th day, when it's turned over to Aaron, at first he offers everything and nothing happens either. So then the people are like, after everything we did, we devoted a year to this project of creating it and building it and weaving it and sawing and chopping and all of the things that put this together, and nothing's happening. This was, remember when God says, build it and I will dwell among you. You will see my presence. It's like, there's nothing happening until Moshe and Aaron go into the tent of meeting together. And if you look at on, let's see, on page 591, it says that, yes, on page 591, on verse 23, Moshe and Aaron came to the tent of meeting, and they went out and they blessed the people, and the glory of Hashem appeared to the entire people. It was only then that the whole purpose of the entire Mishkan came true, after this 7 days up and down, up and down, up and down. So let's talk about this. First of all, why 7? Why the up and down, and what does it mean? And what does it have to do with anything? And what does it have to do with destruction? We understand that the Mishkan is considered a microcosm of all of creation. It's the same thing. It says that's why when we have the laws of Shabbat, the malacha, the creative acts that we refrain from, are based on the creative acts that went into creating the Mishkan. That's one and the same thing. So there's a parallel. So our equation is Mishkan equals all of the creation. The malacha that God did, the malacha that we did, the creative acts we did to build the Mishkan equals the malacha, the creative acts of creation of God, which is why on Shabbat, what does it say in Bereshit, in Genesis, it says, and God rested and stopped all of the melechet avodah, all of the malacha that went into creation. We don't do that because that's what God was doing for creation. So the Mishkan, all those things are the same. So we're going to see if we can follow this parallel. There is a fascinating midrash that says that God built and destroyed worlds before he got to where we are now. God built, created, and destroyed worlds before he got to where we are now. And how many times is this going to happen, of this building and destroying, building and destroying? 7 times. 7 times. It's going to be built and destroyed, built and destroyed, built and destroyed. Now the question is, why? Why would, now, if I build something and take it down, it's because I messed up. And so I need to do it again and fix a problem. Or if I just learned, do you know why WD-40 is called WD-40? It's because the person who invented it tried 39 times to get the formula right, and it wasn't until the 40th try. And so it's called WD-40. So now that would be me. Okay, so that's us, but not if you're the infinite creator of the universe. It's not like, oops, I made a mistake. So that there's something else that is going on. And what we understand is that there is a process, and that each creation and destruction, creation and undoing, was not a going back to square one. It was a renewal, but a transformation where each time it became closer because of the nature of a process. Like your day isn't over because you did it wrong. You don't go to sleep and lose your neshama because you did it wrong. It's because you're involved in a process, and the next day you're building on what you had the day before, and there is a renewal, and you keep part of it and you go on to do more and add to it until you get to your ultimate destination. And that ultimate destination is called Yom Hashmini, the 8th day, where you get to the level where now it is completely has reached its ultimate purpose and its ultimate destination. So the Mishkan was to do that, as well as all of creation, as well as us. Where else do we see this? We also see this in what is called Techiyat HaMetim, which is the resurrection of the dead. It says the human being is called a world also. We are also called a world. Every human being is a world. We know it says a person who saves one person is as if they saved the whole world. Why is that? Because each one of us is a world. In Bereshit, where God says, let us make man, na'aseh li'adam, where let's make man, it says, who's we? Who's we? Let us make man. There are a lot of different commentaries on who this we is. In Christianity, they think it's Jesus. We definitely reject that idea. It is not Jesus. However, some say it was that God consulted the angels and the animals and said, let us make man. And there'll be like kind of some animal and some angel, and we'll put it together and create man. But there's something that goes much farther that says that God was speaking to all of creation, because remember, human beings were created last. That means everything else already existed except for us. We were last on the scene. We're the final product, but we're not just the final product that was the purpose of the whole thing. We are made up of everything. It says that God took like a pinch of this and a pinch of that from the creepy crawlies, from the trees, from the birds, from the other creations, the angels, everything. He made us. And then what are we? We are actually a composite of the entire world. So it's not just an esoteric concept of every person is the world. This is every person is made up of it. And then you look at it, sometimes if you see like the scientific makeup of, we have an electrical system, we have all these different chemicals in us, we have minerals in us, we're made up of everything. Even at the physical level, we're made up of everything. And we are made up of everything. So we are a world. So what happens to us? We come into this world and we have our life, and then we die in one way or another, either tragically or not tragically, but there is an expiration date where we are no longer in this world. And what happens? It says we are buried. This is one of the reasons why we believe in burial. We are buried. It says, and the burial is comparable to a seed being planted in the ground. And what happens when a seed is planted in the ground is before it sprouts again, it decomposes. It looks like nothing's going to happen. In fact, it looks like it's disappearing, but it's not disappearing, because then after it's been underground for a little bit, new life. It says Techiyas HaMetim is no more bizarre or unnatural than planting a seed in the ground and seeing something sprout. Nobody finds that really bizarre. And yet you talk to people about resurrection of the dead, and they think you have to be like a real far out spiritual somebody to believe in that, or you have to be Christian, or you have to be whatever. It's like, no, that's like a totally natural process. It is a natural process because life is about moving, of going up and down, up and down, up and down, but we're getting someplace because we are going in some direction. That direction that we're going in is our ultimate goal when we are finished with the process. So death, so going back again to Yom HaShoah, as horrible and as painful and as devastating and beyond comprehension as the death and destruction were and continue to be, it's not the end. They did not go away. All of those people's lives, there is a sprouting. There's some people, what's her name? I just forgot it. Sarah Yocheved Riegler. I don't know if she's actually has written the book yet or not, because I had a chance to talk to her about it, but she's writing it about people's experiences of whether they know that they themselves were like reincarnations of people who died in the Holocaust. And there can be people who are not Jewish or are Jewish, and there are a whole lot of people who all share a very common experience. I happen to be one of those people. We had a very interesting talk about it, so that there is not this end to where people are, what people are, where people have gone. It's not that they disappeared and that they are no more. It says, and what's our constant reminder about this? Parsha Shmini. When Moshe is putting up and taking down the Mishkan, he's talking about it goes up and it comes down. It goes up and it comes down. It goes up and it comes down, but it doesn't disappear. It is still there. There is renewal, there is life, and then it will reach, when we get to the level 8, it will reach its final destination. And in the meantime, we're in the process. We are in the process of getting there. So we experience this on a miniature life in our each day when we are miniature resurrected. We experience it in periods of our life in all sorts of forms, of times of loss, of devastation, of all sorts of things that can happen that feel very destructive and like it's the end. And Moshe's response to us is, it's never the end. Keep building, keep going, keep growing, because that's the nature of creation. Creation itself is alive. This resurrection idea is not just about human beings, it's about all of creation. In fact, there are sages, and it's a topic that's above my pay grade to really understand, but even talking about the fossils that scientists have found that show that there were other creatures that lived here. There's evidence of dinosaurs and whatever. It's like, that is not incompatible with Torah and Judaism. It's like, those are from other rounds of this, other cycles of creation. And it's not that everything gets destroyed and blown up and started over. It's like, no, this is period's over, and then we're going to start the next period. And in fact, we live on, the dinosaurs or whatever that created the petroleum products that then fuel literally the next step. So it's literally out of the ashes, out of the destruction, out of the whatever. It's like, that was that stage, and now we're going to the next stage. But it's built on, one is built on the next. So that's also related to the idea of the Sfirat HaOmer. We're counting the Omer, we're counting 7 periods of 7 to get to Shavuot, which is the 8th. That's the beginning of the 8th week. That's not just a that's the Yom Hashmini, but it's the 8th week. You look at the 7s that are embedded in Judaism, for which there is no natural evidence of 7. There's no natural evidence of 7. 7 isn't anything. A day, 24 hours, that's a thing. You can see that. You can see the sun. You can see the month. You can see the moon. You can see a year. You see all that. There is nothing that speaks 7 in nature. It's not a thing. It is a Torah concept that is given to us as a piece of wisdom.
It's fine.
It's a piece of wisdom that we are given to let us know that this is how creation works. So what are all the 7s we have? Every holiday we have is about 7. Okay, all the holidays from the Torah are about 7. We have the 7 days of Sukkot. Sorry about that. We have the 7 days of Sukkot. It's only 8 Shmini Atzeret outside the land of Israel. Pesach in the Torah is 7 days. Hanukkah, the menorah, is a 7-branched menorah, 7 days of the week, 7 days of sitting Shiva. A bride and groom are celebrated for 7 days with 7 Sheva brachot, 7 blessings for 7 days is equal to 49. Everything we have is like, it's about 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, so don't forget the 7. It's like 7 is truly our good luck number, because 7 is the number that is telling us there is something else that's embedded in creation that I need to make sure is embedded in you, because you're not going to see a sign of it in nature, but you need to know that's what it's really is happening. And Moshe is going to do up and down 7 times, 7 times, 7 times. And it's going to be embedded in you to be a 7 person. A 7 person says, I know that there are cycles, that this is how it goes. My life is going to be a cycle, and the goal is to keep on going, keep on building, and renew and keep building. And then it will get to its ultimate destination. And it's not just for nothing. So the Jewish people are like, what's happening? I don't see anything happening. It's like, sometimes you can't see it. It's like many processes that we go through. It's like, what am I accomplishing? One of the rabbis just gave an example of, take housework. No matter how well you wash those dishes, they have a magical way of reappearing at the next meal. The laundry you do over and over again. How many times do you have to clean your house? Why do you have to keep dusting? Isn't there such a thing that you're like done with it? It's like, no, there isn't. But that each time it's like, putting away toys, picking up toys after kids. It's like, why bother? Why do we do that? Why do we clean up? Why do we get dressed? Why make my bed? I'm just going to get into it again tonight. It's like, you can say, why do anything? It just needs to be repeated and over again. So the question is, am I getting somewhere? Am I getting somewhere? And the answer is yes. It doesn't look like it. And the Jewish people said the same thing to Moshe. It doesn't look like anything's happening, but there was a process that is taking us somewhere. And we are getting there, and we are building on each level, each stage, and that we need to see our own lives each day like that. Because when people say, you know what, my life, especially now, it feels like Groundhog Day, you just get up and you have the same day over and over and over again. But one of the reasons I love that movie of Groundhog Day is because each day he grew. And each day he learned the lessons from the day before. So on the surface, yes, it looked like the day was the same, but he wasn't the same for having gone through the process. My favorite all-time movie. It's like, yes, there are a lot of Groundhog Day aspects to our life. Get up, same thing, I eat the same thing, I had my same wardrobe, a lot of the tasks look the same. I had the same conversations, I had the same, everything looks the same. It's like, no, it's not, because we're not the same. And there is a process going on. So Moshe was involved in this to teach the people, because he was imitating God. He was imitating God. And if God, when God creates and he built and took down, built and took down, and built and took down 7 times, then Moshe did the same thing. So it becomes a teaching moment for us as well. Our goal is to get to the level 8, but we have to go through the process, and we don't know where we're at. But we need to know also in our own lives that even, God forbid, when the end of our life comes at 120 years, it's not over. And I remember actually saying to a person who had lost her husband at the funeral, and she said, I just can't bear the thought that we're going to bury him. And I said to her, we're not burying him, we're planting him. We're planting him. And that is a burial applies, people's like, I feel like I'm suffocating, I can't breathe. The thought of my loved one being in the ground just makes me feel like I can't stand that. But when it's a planting, people like to go to plantings. And when you plant something, you plant it and you don't see it for a while. And depending on what it is we've planted, we may not see it for a long while. My mom used to tell the story that when she was a little girl, they lived in an apartment, but there was like a little patch of, dirt. And so she wanted to plant something. And so, got some seeds and she planted them, but she kept going out every day and uncovering the dirt to see if anything was happening. And it's just like, that's not how it works. It's like the whole point of it is that it has to be covered up and not seen. And then the magic works. But that's really the most bizarre thing of all. it says, in the commentary, it says that the Jewish people, after 40 years of living in the desert with manna falling for them every single day, they got used to it just like everybody gets used to everything. And when they got into the land of Israel and they saw people planting seeds, they thought that was really weird, because the people who had been born in the desert, they'd never seen that. It's like, what do you mean you're putting seeds in the ground? Like, what is that? It's like, yeah, that's like how you get food. It's like, that's really bizarre. That is really bizarre. So we are planting people, God forbid, who have been buried, because there is an eternality, because it's the nature of creation is always moving. So the movement may be up and it may be down, but it never stops. It says that Hashem gave us the butterfly as the ultimate example of Techiyas Hametim. It says that when a caterpillar builds its chrysalis, its cocoon, and goes in there, it dissolves completely. I mean, it's kind of disgusting. I mean, I remember thinking as a kid that they went in there and I don't know, like these little wings kind of like sprouted out of it, but they turn into mush. Like if you opened it up and you said like, well, how's this looking here for potential? You'd be like, I don't think this is even happening here. This looks like this is worse than nothing. This is nothing. It's like, no, it's not nothing. It's in a process of becoming something that is way better. I mean, wouldn't it be really sad if a caterpillar went into a cocoon and after its period of time it came out and it was still a caterpillar? It'd be like, well, that really didn't work. So the idea is that whatever that mush is becomes the potential and becomes the material out of which the caterpillar becomes a butterfly with way more ability, way more beauty, way more amazing. I couldn't have even thought of that in a million years. If you had never seen a butterfly and you showed someone a caterpillar and said, what do you think this could turn into? You never would ever say a butterfly. It says Hashem gave us that creation to teach us that that is where it's going. So it may look like we're in the cocoon and we dissolved into mush and we are nothing, but it's only because it's going to become a butterfly and it's going to become the next stage, which we can't even imagine what that beauty is going to be. So it's not just human beings who are, and I'm going to use the word evolving but there is a process of there's an improvement process. And it's not just about people, it is about all of creation. And the whole creation is involved with that. How do we know it's all of creation? Because Moshe put up the Mishkan, which is about all of creation, not just about the people. It's about the entire creation is moving. At times, it's harder to see it. At times of difficulty and pain and loss and grief, it's very hard to see that. And we're not faulted for not being able to see it. But we should know enough now to be able to trust the process, to know that something is going someplace and that we are getting someplace. So on this Yom HaShoah, which is so strangely placed in the month of Nisan, it should be in the month of Tevet or the month of Av. It should be there. That's when we're talking about when things are bottoming out. But perhaps the best time to talk about something that is our bleakest moment is at the time when we are also keeping our eyes open for the first flowering of the fruit trees. Because I don't know about your fruit trees, but the fruit trees, they lose all their leaves. It's not like even an evergreen, okay? They look like nothing is going to be ever coming from them again. As close to dead as you can look is a fruit tree in the winter, until it's not, until it blossoms again. So perhaps it is that, I would say like shock absorber, that cushion to be able to have Yom HaShoah in the month of Nisan. It's like where we can even, to the extent that we can bear it at all, perhaps it needs to be in the month of Nisan so that we can have at least more of the picture, even though we will never completely understand it, that we cannot really comprehend it. So that's today, this Parsha, beautiful, powerful Parsha of Shmini, of destruction and taking down, putting up, and having this process. Gabi, yes.
Well, Yasher Koach, that was an amazing perspective. I would love to know, and probably all of you, the name of the book when it comes out by Sarah Yocheved.
By Sarah Yocheved Riegler. Yes, I would love to know it too. And as I said, I don't know if it is already out. I don't know if anybody else has heard of it. but this was a couple of years ago. I was so excited. This was one on our women's trip to Israel, and we went to this wonderful Rabbi Wasserman, not related to our Rabbi Wasserman here, who their family hosts like 30 people every Shabbos for lunch. And I called him and basically said, can we come? And he's like, sure. I'm like, is this so chutzpahdik? I'm like, our son said, that you host people. So he hosted all of us, and he sat us all next to different people. And so he sat me, not knowing, he sat me next to Sarah Yocheved Riegler. And I was like, whoa, this is so exciting for me. This was like being at the Academy Awards. So it was very special. So we had a wonderful conversation, and she told me about this book that she was writing, because she herself also experiences herself as a reincarnation of somebody who was killed in the Holocaust. So we started talking about that. So she had sent out a survey to people to share their perspectives, and she said she was getting things back from Jews, non-Jews, men, women, but with very common underlying experiences.
Ellen, what year was that she was telling you about that?
This was our last trip to Israel, which was in when was that? 18.
Okay, because the last book I see of hers was Emunah with Love and Chicken Soup 2016.
Yeah, it's not
I
that
don't
one.
see anything. Yeah, I put in newest books by Sarah Yocheved Riegler, and that's all that came up.
Okay, so she must still be collecting. She must still be collecting the stories. Yeah, Joan.
Yes, as a child of 2 survivors,
Yes.
I carry that trauma with me too. But I wanted to ask you, Ellyn, what makes you feel like you are a survivor, that you are a reincarnated? What is it that, your path, what is it?
So a number of things. One is I have 0 relatives that I know of who were impacted by the Holocaust. That was not part of my personal story, so I don't carry any. I shouldn't say that. The Jewish people carries a collective psychic wound because we're all one, and so we do feel it. Since I was a little child, I was always haunted by being chased. Nightmares of like Holocaust kind of nightmares, being chased. So that was just as a kid, but those were just like, I thought everybody had those kind of nightmares. Part of it is my path also. I feel like I was I went to afternoon Hebrew school, but I was just always very focused on Judaism, always very focused. I feel like I may have been like a teacher or somebody in a community that got ended short, but my more experiential. So I always felt it, and I always felt I can't even read Holocaust literature. I cannot, I don't want to go to any site. I can't, it's too much for me with no family connection. But my weirdest experience was when our daughter Audrey was about, I don't know how old you are when you learn to take a shower, 7, 8 years old. And it was like, Audrey, I'll come in the shower with you and we'll take a shower. So we were in our bathroom and we both got in to the shower, and all of a sudden I had a panic attack. Like I broke out in a cold sweat. She had her face in the corner of the shower, kind of hiding her face. And I freaked out. And I turned off the shower. I said, okay, we're done. And I was like, no, this just like sent like bolts of anxiety and whatever through me. I couldn't do it. So I've talked to other people who actually specifically had that situation. They said they could not shower with a group of people. And it was actually somebody else in our community who said like, oh my gosh, I had an experience like that and I can't do it. And so it's like a bunch of those things. I remember talking to Rabbi Twersky, and he said, where do you think those souls went? It's a closed system here. When we say, when we comfort a mourner, the name of God we use is Hamakom, which literally means the place. Like, what's kind of a weird name? Why would you say that? You think we would call it Harachaman, that the merciful, may the merciful one comfort you. But we don't say that. We say, may Hamakom, may the place comfort you. It's like, what place are you talking about? So the place is that we are all inside God's reality. There is no other reality. There is no abyss. There is no place that is not God. God is the place of all of reality. And I may be in this corner of the reality or that corner of the reality, but I'm within the place. So it happens that Hashem's name, the Yud He Vav He name, gives us that information also. I forget who taught me this. I did not figure this out myself. The letter of God's name are Yud, He, Vav, and He. If we take those letters and turn them into spatial information and make it into space, usually we create space by saying length times width gives us area, right? So 3 by 3 equals 9, 9 square feet. So if we take Hashem's name and we turn it into spatial, if we take Yud times Yud plus He times He plus Vav times Vav plus He times He, those numbers add up to Hamakom, the gematria of the place. What is this place? It is a multi-dimensional place that is called God's reality. That is actually the most comforting thing to a mourner, if they understood even what is being said. Because what is our challenge when somebody has died is that they're gone. I lost them, they're gone. And this is, they're not gone. You may not be able to see them with your physical eyes, but they are in just another part of the place that is God's reality. And at some future time, when we have Techiyas Hametim, that place will open up and we will see all of it. But now we're like children who, when the parent leaves the room, thinks that their mommy has disappeared and not that she's in the next room. That's what we experience. And that's the comfort, is I can't see her in my relation. I mean, all of us know who have lost parents and dear ones, your relationship with your lost, with your people who have, your dear ones who have departed this earth, does not end with, I mean, some people are kind of counting on that. If they had difficult relationships with their parents, like, well, when she dies, then I'm not going to have any issues anymore. It's like, well, good luck with that. Yes, you do, because your relationship continues. So they're also, and it's not just when people say, they say these kind of trite things, well, you carry them in your heart. If that's the sole thing, what about an entire family that's been wiped out that doesn't have anybody to remember them? Are they not in anybody's hearts? That's really what we're relying on? It's like, that's not what we're relying on. We're relying on the fact that God's reality is the only reality and that nobody is outside of it. And that's the comfort of Hamakom Yinachem. Gabi.
And that's amazing. Thank you. Very helpful. And do you remember what the Sarah Yocheved Rigler told you why she thinks she's?
It was something similar. It was just like this, always kind of a knowing, like I just know. And it wasn't, even as a kid, like I never went to any seances or, tarot cards or any of those kinds of things. It was just like, I was just kind of like knew, like I knew, like, my maiden name is Ansel. And if somebody would have asked me, I didn't have the words until I was older. I just always kind of knew. And I just thought that other people kind of knew that too. But I remember talking to Rabbi Twersky, and he said, those souls need to come back. So it's like, because God doesn't, that's the other thing, is God doesn't leave the plan undone. It says that God's will be done. And if God's will is for things to happen and for people to finish their tafkid, finish their purpose in the world, he will bring them back. If they're done, then they're done. So that's mazel tov and you're done. But if you weren't done, don't think that anybody can stop the ultimate purpose from happening. That's why we have, throughout kind of Jewish, our sages, etc., just examples of this. We have Moshe and Aaron are considered to be a reincarnation of Cain and Abel. Okay. When Cain killed Abel, he definitely cut short Abel's complete expression of who he was meant to be. That was like, 25% of humanity. Kind of stopped that in its tracks. So God's like, okay, well, I guess that didn't work out. He's like, okay, not okay, but okay, he'll be back. I will bring this back because the brother relationship needs to be the tikkun. That's the tikkun, that's the fixing. Brings it back. And Moshe and Aaron are the brothers who are not jealous of each other, who work together and who fulfill their roles differently and in companionship and greatness. That's Cain and Abel who were supposed to do that. The other we have is that, and it's people can be multiple people. Moshe is also considered a reincarnation of Noah. That Noah should have prayed for humanity instead of letting them just get destroyed. And so when God says to Moshe, I'm going to destroy the people after the sin of the golden calf, Moshe's answer is macheni, erase me from your book if you're going to do that. The word macheni is the same letters as May Noach, the waters of Noah. He's like, I'm not falling for that one again. You start over with me. No, you're not starting over with me. The waters of Noah, they're blamed on Noah. That they're called the waters of Noah. It's like, you should have prayed for those people and you didn't. So Moshe's like, I'm praying for these people and you wipe me out if you erase me, if you're going to erase them. So we see this kind of this tikkun, even more recently than that. It's not so recent, but it is recent. The lives of Rabbi Akiva and Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Moshe Chaim Luzzatto is considered a reincarnation of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva did not start to learn even the Aleph Bet until he was 40 years old. And then he became the greatest sage. His students, after the ones who all died, he started over with 5 more. And those 5 rabbis are our rabbis of the Talmud. Our Torah is Rabbi Akiva's Torah. But there's a problem. What about his first 40 years? He's missing something. He's missed the first 40 years. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who was born way later, says he came into the world, it's like he sprung into the world as a rabbi. By the time he was 12, he had his own yeshiva. He wrote Sfarim and books and commentaries and all this stuff. He seemed to just know. It's like, how did you know this? And then he died of the plague at the age of 40. He's buried next to Rabbi Akiva. So when you go to Tveria, there you'll see Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto are buried next to each other because they're the complete picture of that mission got divided over 2 people. Because God's will for what needs to happen in this world cannot be stopped. That is the ultimate comfort. It's like, yes, we'll be in pain for the loss, and we're not told not to be in pain. We're supposed to mourn, we're supposed to grieve. But at some level, we also have Aaron's response at some level, which is Vayidom Aharon. And Aaron was silent when his sons Nadav and Abihu killed. Was like, what am I supposed to say? It's like, yes, it's painful. And we're supposed to be in pain at loss. In fact, we're commanded to be. You can't say, I didn't really like that person so much, so I'm not really sitting Shiva. It's like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And you can't say, this is so tragic, I'm going to sit Shiva for the rest of my life. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to go through the process of 7, and then you're going to move forward. So this 7 concept is the spiritual structure of ourselves, of humanity, of creation, of the Mishkan, of the world. And it is the one that tells us how this all works so that we can move forward. Because otherwise, honestly, any of these devastating things that have happened on the personal or the communal level are truly enough to keep anybody from even getting up the next day. It's like, why bother? Do you see how much death and destruction and horrible things are going on? It's like, why bother? It's like, because we're in a process and we need to keep moving forward. And we need to know that things are being built layer on layer. And just like Sfirat HaOmer, each day is being built on the previous day. Each week is building on the previous week. And, even in kindergarten, The Sfirat HaOmer project is of a mountain, and it's always ascending. Nobody ever has a Sfirat HaOmer project of the counting of the 49 days that goes down into a ditch. Nobody's project does that. And nobody's project stays, if it stays flat, it goes from here to there. There is always a there. There is always a destination. And that's represented by the 8th day. Or in the case of Shavuot, the 50th day, which is the beginning of the 8th week, when we transcend and we get to the next level. So there are many days that feel like they're like this must be one of the destruction days. This must be a takedown day. But then the next day is going to be a rebuild day. And that is the comfort that we have as we take the pain. I think Israel does this also beautifully next week with Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. Talk about getting the message that you mourn and grieve and then you celebrate. Is you literally go from grieving and mourning for Yom HaZikaron of those who fell in battle and those who were killed by terrorists, and everybody has been touched, every single person has been touched. And then when it ends, it turns into joy, the joy of, and also this, and also this. You'd think just even just like for emotional, whatever, you like, could we spread this out a little bit? Could we have like maybe a couple of days to rebound? It's like, nope, I think we're doing this like that. And it's a spiritual training as well. And it's really about resiliency. It's how can you experience pain deeply and use the very depths of the pain, like a trampoline, like when you jump, in order to really go high on a trampoline, by definition, you have to get bounce. Bounce by definition means you go down. That trampoline has to go, that whatever, the fabric has to go down in order to spring you up. So Yom HaZikaron is the down, 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 and then it's spring up and go in the opposite direction. That's what it means to be Jewish. It's like we spring back. So we feel the pain. In fact, you can only have the spring if you feel the pain. So people who are kind of flatlining, they're not getting any bounce and they're not going anywhere. So it's the people who feel the pain can experience the joy. It says it about Jerusalem, only those who cried over the destruction of Jerusalem will be able to rejoice in her rebuilding. So it's like, if you don't feel the pain, you're not feeling the pleasure. It's like in a family, at a family simcha. Who's the happiest at a family simcha? The family. So like all the other people you ask, you invite someone to your wedding or your whatever, they're focused on, oh, nice schmorg, nice, good salads, pretty flowers, whatever. The people who are having the simcha, they may not even ever eat. They may not even see all the things that they paid for their guests. They may not even be aware of any of that because they're in the simcha. And the ones are the parents who cried over the kid, who took them to therapy, to the orthodontist, to pick them up off the street. Those are the people who are the happiest because they're the ones who invested the most blood, sweat, and tears. And that's just how it goes. So in order to have the joy, we almost are obligated to feel the pain as well. So we have Yom HaShoah. Next week, we will have Yom HaZikaron, Remembrance Day. And next Thursday, we will have Yom HaAtzmaut of Israel, Independence Day as well. So we are kind of bouncing all over the page. And we're like Moshe. We are taking it down, we're putting it up, taking it down. And that's what we do in our lives as well. To know that this is normal, that this is part of the plan, is also, I think, helpful. Instead of thinking, I was expecting my life to be like Easy Street. What's with this, pits and valleys and mountains here? I wasn't expecting that terrain. It's like, well, that's the terrain that was built into the system. If you know it's coming, then you can use it for what it's supposed to be. So God willing, we will get the most out of our painful moments to launch us to heights of renewal and reflowering, and we'll keep our eyes open. And you have to look for the blossom, to pay attention. It doesn't say, wait until the tree is full of blossoms. It says, you be on the lookout for the first blossom. That's what we have to look for. And in our own lives as well. Do I see any chance here? Can I look for any sign that there's something fruitful, productive, beneficial, something renewed? that can come from this situation, from this thing that looked so dead. And that's the place we want to be in this month of Nisan, on this very special Parshas of Shmini, counting Sfirata Omer, building, building, building on this painful, powerful day of Yom HaShoah.
Yasher Koach, Ellen. Thank you for opening up to us. That means a lot.
Thank you.
Very personal. I've never heard such a thing before. I don't know if the rest did. Totally new to me. Reincarnation, yes, but from Holocaust, people that died, it's
A lot of souls, a lot of neshamas. And, you know, even like people who are, even the people who have, you know, come back to their Jewish connections, like, who are these people? Like, what was their inspiration? Like, where do these souls come from? People who have converted, like, where do these people come from? I mean, we've already said for a long time, way before the Holocaust, that people who convert into Judaism, that their neshamas were at Mount Sinai. It's like, you are all here today. And that they ended up in bodies that were in non-Jewish bodies, and their souls over the centuries have made the travel. And you can hear different people say, I always knew that I was Jewish. I always knew I was different than my family. I always felt a pull. Now, some people don't say that. Some people say, I learned and it spoke to me. But you know what? Lots of people learn lots of things. It doesn't necessarily mean they change their life. I studied astronomy. That didn't make me into an astronomer. You know, people can learn all sorts of interesting things and not have it say like, this spoke to me, and so I changed my life because of it. That's a different thing. So it's just so funny that reincarnation, resurrection of the dead are the most rational concepts that there are, because all we have to do is look around at our own physical world to see evidence of this all the time. And it's been built into our system with the power of 7. We have 7 species in the land of Israel. We have 7 matriarchs and patriarchs. We have 7 days of the week. It's like 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Don't forget the 7. It's definitely our good luck number. So wishing you all a very wonderful Shabbos, powerful Shabbos, and keep your eyes open for those blossoming trees.
you always say it's completion.
Thank you.
7 is completion.
7 is completion. That's right. 7 is completion. But there's something after 7, which is 8.
Ascendance.
Yep.
Good luck to all of us. Thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ellyn.
for joining me. My total
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you, Ellyn.
My pleasure.
Tonight is the ADL Remembrance Holocaust. If you would like to join, I don't think it's too late.
Great. Okay.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Tova. Bye, Andy.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ellen.
Bye, Gabi.
Good Shabbos.
Have a wonderful Shabbos, everyone.